Sanje chudang soke sonam la chancho bado dane jason chen dagi soke be sonam chen do la pinche sanje do basho sanje chudang soke sonam chancho bado dane jason chen dagi soke be sonam chen do la pinche sanje do basho sanje chudang soke chancho bado dane jason chen dagi soke be sonam chen do la pinche sanje do basho. So today we're talking about mind training. I think there are very specific teachings on the mind training called Lojong, and there's I think many different verses. One of the most popular verse is the 8-verse mind training, Lojong Tsiyama we call it. But that one you can read anywhere, you can find anywhere. So I think I was thinking more to go on a general basis of mind training rather than based on a certain book. So in order to understand mind training, a Buddhist perspective of what the mind training is and how the mind is trained, in order to do that you need to understand what a mind is, how it works, why it's related to our daily life, how it's related to our daily life, in what ways we can apply and use in order to tweak our mind into gaining benefits for ourselves. So that's one perspective of understanding what or how to train the mind. So in order to start, I think in the Buddhist philosophy, one of the most important thing regarding not just Buddhists, I think also in a lot of different other religions, other dharmas, similarly mind becomes a very important source of source of or basis of working on in general. So in the Buddhist perspective, you start with understanding what the mind is. That it's not the body, that it is other than the body, that it's in reality with the body, it's related to the body, it works with the body, but it's not the body. Yeah? So scientifically, I think mind is a little bit hard to prove, because it's what we call it unseeable, untangible. Because it's untangible, it's a little bit hard to prove. But there are also sources that indicate that the possibility from a scientific view, I think there's indications that there's a possibility of something similar to the mind or the soul that exists. But they can't prove it 100% because, like we said earlier, it's untangible, unseeable, something like that. So so in order to understand the mind and its relationship with the body, we need to understand, because a lot of different people, they point at different places when they talk about the mind or the soul. Some people point at their heart, some people point at their brain, some people point at their different things they point at. So we need to understand that the mind is related to those, but it's not those. There are brain dead people who are alive. There are people who have had heart surgeries, fake hearts, mechanical hearts that are alive. So regarding our organs, internal organs, and regarding our body, physical body, you need to understand that we can still be alive without these things being what they are. Like with a fake heart, being alive with a fake heart, being alive while brain is of no use, being alive while this lung is of fake lung or different person's kidney. I don't know, all kinds of different medical things that we apply, and we still cannot prove that the person cannot be alive with that organ. So understanding that, in order to understand that there is something not exactly our organ, but something different from that, something way beyond that. Yeah. So there comes the understanding, maybe or a slight understanding of the existence of something, or a cognitive, right? Something cognitive that is formless, that is within us, that cognizes things, and that produces emotions, feelings, and all kinds of different all kinds of different ways of expressing. Yeah. So this, in that manner, we understand that there is something that we point down to, that is a mind, which is completely separate from the body, but which is in tune with it. Yeah. So that being the mind, now we need to understand what the mind actually does, what it is. Yeah. So in Buddhist philosophy, Sheba, mind is known as Sheba. Sheba means knowing, cognizing, recognizing. Yeah, that's Sheba, that's mind. So and then inside the mind, then there's different kinds of different 6 primary mind. There's secondary minds like that, and then emotions are a part of it. So now you understand, once you understand that the cognizing part is something different from all of this, and then you understand that it's a mind, then you also need to understand, then you start to work with the process of what the mind does, how it reflects on things, how it reacts to things, how it, because we talk about cause and condition, cause and effect. So therefore, because it's something that is impermanent, therefore it's a basis. You need to understand that as long as it's something that is impermanent, it's a base of cause and effect. So therefore, when you create a cause or a condition, the mind reacts. And while it reacts, then the effects start to come out. Yeah? Then we start to understand what the effects are. Then we have the gross emotions, then we have the non-gross emotions, happiness, joy, and then kindness, love, that there's all kinds of different emotions. Then gross emotions, anger, hatred, desire, attachment, all of these gross emotions we start to identify that these are a part of something that we have never understood before. Yeah? There comes the understanding of what a mind really is. Now in Buddhism, there's different perspectives on how the mind perceives things. You have different schools. Some school says, it's all to do with the mind. It's creation of the mind. The world itself is a creation of the mind. If there was no mind, then there's no world around you. Yeah? The pot in front of you, the watch in front, the table in front of you. When there is no mind to cognize it, then the table becomes non-existent. Yeah? So there, one perspective. Then the other perspective, yes, it partly is based on the perspective or the application of the mind, but also there has to be something existence from its own side. The object or the whatever it is in front of you, if there is nothing existing from its own side, then also cannot be cognizable. So there has to be something there, and then on top of that your mind's application towards it. Then when the two meet together, then you get a product. So now there, different perspective. It's not just the mind. Yeah, it's the nizom, we say. It's the what do we say? The combination of the two that brings out existence. Yeah. Then there's also another perspective where you say, no, the mind is only something on the side that cognizes. The existence has nothing to do with the mind. It's there. Whether the mind sees it, whether the mind doesn't see it, whether the mind labels it, doesn't label it, the object is always going to be there, right? So it exists from its own side. So these are different perspectives. You work with those, you understand when we talk about what reality is, the truth of what was it? The truth of the ultimate truth. Yeah, in order to understand what reality is and what the ultimate truth is, you need to go through these perspectives. If you have no perspectives such as these to apply, then how are you going to research? How are you going to figure things out? So first, viewing as object from the mind side, then viewing the object as existence from its own side, then viewing the object being the combination of the two, coming together, then also viewing the object as not the mind, not from its own side, something completely different. So these are all different perspectives that you can apply. Now, what is the use of this perspective is to find out the true nature of things. Because unless you find out the true nature of things, you can't deal with things. So there comes the application of the Four Noble Truths, which is truth of suffering, truth of cause of, cause, then cessation, then the path. So unless you understand suffering, how are you going to get rid of it? So similarly, unless you understand what cognition is, what is validated, what anger is, what hatred is, if you cannot understand that, then how are you going to negate it? We understand that these bring out fear, bring out anger, bring out suffering, bring out pain. We understand that these things brings out those effects. Like I said, as long as it's something that is impermanent, it is the basis of cause and condition. And as long as it's the basis of cause and condition, what it does, it brings out results, whether it be positive, negative. Then the negative results we don't want. Very clear. as what do you say? As beings that are very in tune with love since childhood, mother's care, mother's love. Then growing up, we are born through love, we grow up through love, we survive through love, and at the end of our life, then we fear of losing what we love. So we are creatures of love. So, and when we forget to understand, not forget, but when we lack to understand how to gain more love, then becomes a problem. And we know that hatred, anger, sadness, these things don't bring out that. We know these things bring out the opposite of happiness and love, which is anger and hatred, right? We know suffering, not anger, yes, anger and suffering. So therefore we try to figure out methods to negate those things, to negate suffering. That's why mind is important in Buddhism. It's the straight link to anger, because anger itself is a mind. So it's a straight link to anger. It's a straight link to suffering, because suffering is a product of unhappiness, and unhappiness is a product of the mind. Happiness, unhappiness is based on the mind, and that one is not very hard to understand. You have what do we say, worldly examples, many worldly examples that we can relate to. Same condition, same weather, same place, but the mind may be a little bit different place. Mind itself being in a little bit different place, then different results. Sometimes when you are happy and it rains, the rain itself becomes a happy product. You enjoy the rain. Sometimes we are sad when it's raining, then the rain itself becomes a product of sadness. We are sad in the rain. So there's differences there, which is not really conditioned. We think it's conditioned by all the outside, what we see, what we feel, but in reality is all in the mind, right? How and what at that specific moment, what we are feeling, what our mind is going through, what it's observing, what it is producing, then comes the result of happiness, sadness, all of these different kinds of emotions. So the basis of all of this being a product of how the mind works. Yeah? So now you understand that you are partly physical because you are in, the mind itself is in the vessel which is the body. Yeah. Now here you have little different, like again I said, different philosophies, different views on what a person really is. Some say is, when we say a person, some say it's the combination of the 5 aggregates. Pungbonga, I think. Pungbo is aggregates, I think. So Pungbonga is the combination. A person is a combination of the 5 aggregates. Yeah, then some say it's not, some say it's the aggregate. Some say no, it's a product of merely labeling the 5 aggregates. Yeah, we say. Then some say no, it's the 6th sense. I don't know what Yiginamshe is in English, but they say it's the 6th. You can call it the 6th sense. It's not based on the eye sense, in this eye, nose, mouth. It's not based on those senses. It's based on the 6th sense, Yiginamshe. So I think quite close to, what is it? Similar to soul, the concept of soul, I think. So some say completely different from all of this. So now when you want to understand yourself, when you want to understand what you are, where you are coming from, where you are going, then the relationship between cause and condition, karma, the cause, the idea of karma, together with understanding what the mind is, then you have the result of understanding who you are. So without the mind, here again, when you want to understand yourself, sit down, meditate, view yourself, contemplate who you are, what you are, within yourself. You need again to understand mind. Without understanding the mind, very hard to pinpoint you as a person. Now this one I think very closely related to the what was it? The middle way concept, umedawa. It's neither that nor this. It's right in the middle. The middle way, we call it umeda. So I think it's very closely related to that. And in that perspective, there is also again different views that you can apply. And the more famous one is the basis of labeling. Now here comes the concept of emptiness again. So when you tope partadam, the object itself is merely labeled, non-existent from its own side, non-existence from the mind side. It exists merely based on labeling something. So when the object itself comes into existence, it comes to existence only after you apply a label to it. So this is again another concept. Now this one, in order to understand this concept, you need to go into the view of emptiness. And then again, emptiness very closely related to the mind. Why? Because emptiness, the view of emptiness is applied in order to negate the self-grasping attitude. And the self-grasping attitude is a product of the mind again. Tangzin, the grasping attitude. So now here again, we say based on how you apply your views onto yourself, basically yourself. When you talk about suffering, when you talk about not wanting to suffer, when you talk about the products of the results of suffering, anger, hate, what do we say, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, then some people drinking problem, alcoholic problem, drug problem, all of this result of not being happy. So therefore when you see these results and you want to avoid them, then again we fall back to the category of understanding what the self is, where the suffering comes from within the self. Yeah? What kind of aggregate, what kind of concept brings out that self, that grasping attitude towards the I. And now that grasping attitude, what kind of result that brings towards your life in general. The stronger the grasping attitude, the more the pride, the more the fear. Yeah? The more the fear, anger, judgment, yeah? Then harsh labeling. Then based on those harsh labeling, then what do we say? People start to avoid you. Yeah? Then society starts to avoid you. Then because everyone is starting to walk away from you, then life becomes hard. Then anxiety, then stress, then depression, then start to drink, then take drugs. So there, samsara, we say, no, the circle of samsara, korwa. The circle going around and round and round. When you talk about samsara, there's two ways of looking at it. One way is looking at it as the wheel. The wheel goes round and round and round. Yes. If it reaches the top, then it goes all the way back again. Then again it goes to the top, then all the way back again. So as long as you're unable to deal with those grasping attitudes, negate it from the root. Yeah? Root negatory attitudes. If you cannot negate it from the root, then this happens. You get rid of it for time being, then you fall back to place again. Then you need to start all over again. So now this is one view of what samsara is. Then the second view of what samsara is the body. Yeah, pungbo, tuje korwa jen pungbo. Tuje, impermanence. Korwa, samsara. Pungbo, body. So none other than the body itself. Body is very fragile, extremely fragile. One small needle, one small drop of poison, one small virus yeah, can affect the body, kill the body. Not kill the body, but disintegrate the body, make it useless. This is how fragile it is. But then productive, very productive as well. Yeah? So now, korwa, body, how, as long as you don't negate the cause and the conditions to be reborn, in such bodies again and again and again, samsara again. Because at the basis, we talked about the mind and how the mind reacts, and suffering being, the product of what do we say, cross minds, yeah, of product of anger, hatred, desire, attachment, like that. Now, if the body didn't exist, then it's very likely that the mind would be compelled to produce pride and jealousy, anger, like that. Yeah? I think there is possibility, but the possibility is much lesser when there is no body. When there is a body, then more fear, more anger, like I said, because it's very fragile, therefore more fear. Because you need to, because the grasping attitude towards the body is, the importance of this body becomes so, exaggerated, therefore more pride. So these things start to result these things start to happen as a result. So now coming down to the point of what the root point of what all of this, at the end of the day, like we talked earlier, we talked about understanding the mind, then relating it with the body, what the body is, what the mind is, how the mind produces results based on different situations, conditions, and these all being again a perspective that is applied by the mind, therefore the results appearing. So these things is one thing. Then the second thing, the middle way, the Four Noble Truths, how it's related to the Four Noble Truths, what kind of method such as the view of emptiness and the Four Noble Truths, we can apply in order to understand the basis of how to negate these things, why we want to negate these things, and what samsara is. Yeah, so this is RAF, a very brief understanding of all of this. Now at the basis of all of this, we come back to, again, very simple teaching, easy to understand, not very easy to apply, but easy to understand, which is again coming back to the view of the grasping attitude. When there is grasping attitude, when there is something so important to you, such as the body or the samsara that you are carrying, then there is labeling. When there is labeling, then there is over labeling. Yeah? So we over label things when in reality they are not as we think they are. So the body being so important, and we giving the body more credit than it is what it deserves. Yeah? Therefore, more pride, more anger, more jealousy. Then when the body is not able to produce what it's supposed to produce, then anger, jealousy. When the body doesn't meet the expectation that you expect it to, then again suffering. So these all come down to the point of understanding yourself. In general, the body has to be looked at as not you, but as a vessel you are traveling in. It's two completely different things, right? You being a person who's, like I said, a person who is very in tune with love, compassion, happiness, joy, caring, sharing. Then the body being a product, a karmic product, and being the cause and the conditions of all of these gross emotions. These two completely different sides. Yeah? Then the mind being right in the middle, balancing the two. Balancing those two. Then when you are unable to balance, that's when life crisis. That's when life crisis start to happen. So being able to balance these things is being able to balance life through the training of your mind. That's lojong. That's mind training. So now coming down to how to train the mind. In Buddhist philosophy, I always say there is no one way for every person. This is, I think, one great thing about the Buddha Dharma teaching. Unlike a lot of different other teachings where there is one method for everyone, in Buddhism there is no one method for everyone. Yeah, like we talked earlier, everyone is different, every mindset is different. Therefore, different mindset has to, at the end, even though the result at the end, the reaching point is same, every mind has to travel its own journey, different ways. Yeah, some are in tune with practicing compassion, some are in tune with practicing understanding, realizing the Four Noble Truths. Some are more in tune with understanding the view of emptiness and the grasping attitude and why we should negate it. Some are not very happy with that view and only want to concentrate on practice such as devotion or such as faith. So these are all different methods. Now what is the right method for you? That one you need to figure out. I think you need to figure out for yourself. But the teachings are always there, starting all the way. If you read the Lamrim, in through the Gelug perspective, you read the Lamrim, starting from Guru devotion all the way to Four Noble Truths, then compassion, love, then the paramita, the 6 paramita, then the 10 paramita, then the path and the grounds. So all of these are different methods. Renunciation. Now the root of all of this comes down to 3 things. Renunciation, nyejung, then bodhicitta, compassion, then the view of emptiness. Now every practice cannot do without the view of emptiness. It's a must. Even tantric practice, if you want to enter into tantra, you need, if not full realization, full understanding of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the view of emptiness, you need at least, with less effort, realizing without much effort. This one you need, if you want to enter the tantric path, you need those things. Then sutric path is relative to any other practice. Like I said, if you want to start from the basis, Four Noble Truth, logical, easy to understand, definable. So these things, all practices that you can apply. Now coming down to the basis, again another basis I think is tweaking the mind. Tweaking the mind means working with the mind. Applications that you can apply, different methods that you can apply in order to work with the mind. And one of the most famous ways of training the mind, I always say there's 2 ways. One is habituating. You must be able to habituate. Like you habituate in anything, starting from writing to talking to understanding. These are all habituations that we have developed throughout our life. Exact same thing with the mind. You need to habituate it in producing pure motives, in producing more compassion, more love, in reducing anger, fear, hatred, desire. These are all one thing, habituation. Second thing, we say mikbaji lamin is dangmo to you in Tibetan, which means looking at, being able to look at something and understand that there are 2 sides to it. When you develop love, what goes down? Anger goes down. This is very easy to understand, right? You cannot love and be angry at the exact same time towards something. Cannot go together. So similar to that, every mindset, every motivation, every thought, every feeling, every view, it works in the same manner. As long as it's a mind, there is a mikpachila means in the juba. It exists, it's always there. You just need to figure out what it is. Then if one part is going up, when you start developing the other part, then this starts to go down. It's like a scale, we call it, is it? Scale? So it's like a scale, When you start to work on compassion, then anger starts to go down. When you start to work on others, then the self-grasping attitude goes down. That's how it works. These are the 2 most famous methods of Tibetan traditional, I think not Tibetan, but in general, Buddhist traditional method of training the mind. In order to do this, now many different logics, different methods, different concepts, different ways, different paths, different teachings, a lot of these things you can study throughout your life. But at the end of the day, you need to understand, whichever teaching you go to, whichever method you go to, it can give you more understanding, clear understanding on how to do, but this is the method, no other way. These are the 2 methods. Mind training. And then I also think, so coming down to understanding the mind, I think we went through quite a lot today. But at the end of the whole thing, the basis of the whole thing is training in it. Then what is the result of training in it? Why should we train in it? Some people say, no, what's the point of training in it? And the world is like this, people live with fear, people live with anger, people live with anxiety, people live with all of these things. People live with it. What's the point of all of this? If I go back, I'm going to have this. I can't avoid it. A lot of people think like that. They think because the surrounding is like this, therefore I can't avoid it, which is again not true. Yeah? We come back to the point where I told you, it's how the perspective, the label you apply that makes a difference. Yeah? Once you start to shift your labeling towards an object, then your reaction towards it, emotional reaction towards it starts to change. So now you're tweaking your mind, at the end of the day comes to how you work yourself, or how you convince yourself to what do we say, divert your labeling to objects. Yeah? When you are able to divert those labelings, then things start to change. What used to be good starts to turn to bad. What used to be bad starts to turn to good. This is all based on your labeling. This is tweaking the mind, training in it, habituating in it. Then, like I said, Mikwajilamin is working with the exact opposite of bringing up the opposite side of what you want to negate. Then start to see changes. Yeah? Then all of this, without the labeling, cannot exist. So you also need to understand what labeling is. At the end of the day, the truth, the ultimate truth, it's based. The ultimate truth, it's understanding that whatever it is in front of you, no matter it be a condition of desire, no matter it be a condition of hatred, no matter what kind of object that conditions you to bring out those emotions, no matter what it is, as long as you're able to tweak your mind at that right time, then that condition starts to change. You start to see differently towards that thing. What used to be the object of hatred starts to become the object of desire. What used to become the object of desire starts to become the object of love. What used to be the object of love starts to become an object of negation. Some people, they drink so much, then at the end of the day, when the logic and the reason starts to hit them and they fall to their lowest point, then they realize. That's when realization starts to happen. Then once they realize, then they start changing the label of the alcohol. It's bad for me, it's this, it's that, it's harming me, it's harming my family, it's so many different logics, then it starts to change. Yeah? When the labeling changes, then what happens? You start to avoid it. So this is, I think, basis of tweaking the mind. What level? That one, I think, difference, right? And drinking worldly things, drinking like alcoholic addiction, drug addiction, dealing with anger issues, dealing with anxiety. These things are worldly things. Now, this, I think, more mild, more easy to work with. Yeah? As long as you have the heart and you have the energy and you have the drive, then not very hard to work with. Once you enter the path, then you need to start to work with the negative objects, emotional, the products, emotional products, gross emotional products, then it becomes real hard. But as long as you're able to apply these three methods, this is what Lojong is. You are able to do it. And the result, people have been able to show results. It's not something that is created or people just saying. This is very logical. You can even sit down, meditate on it, think on it. You will start to understand that this is actually applicable. Yeah? Like we talked about earlier, the habituating thing. As long as you have the heart and you start working on something habituate yourself into something. First it's hard, but you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. At the end of the day, it becomes child's play. And this is with everything. Yeah, every practice, same thing. Even love, compassion. Then at the end of the day, I think most important part, the thing that needs to be, always needs to be inside you, is the result. What you want the result to be. When you have, if you want to buy a car, just mindset of wanting to buy a car is not good enough. You need the poster of the car stuck on your ceiling, maybe where you sleep. Yeah, the reminder, it has to be there. So you need to keep reminding yourself always, the result, where you want to be, what you want to be. Don't you want to be a better person? Don't you want to be a nicer person? Don't you want to develop more of this? Don't you want to get rid less anger, less hatred, less suffering? You need to keep asking yourself these questions, reminding yourself where the results can lead to. Yeah? That's also important mind training. Through that, then you start to see results. Yeah? When you have the poster of the car, or on the ceiling or right in front of you, every day you see it, the fire starts to burn. So you need that as well, the drive that pushes you towards doing all of this. Yeah, so mind training, I think that's about it. Mind training, I think more basic, but I think important. In Buddhism, nothing is more important than the basics. If you don't have the basics, if you can't come back to the basics from time to time, then no matter how much you have studied, no matter how, where you are on your path, there's no way of attaining full realization. Humblicity, that's one way of understanding it. You need to be humble. Yeah? You need to be able to come back to the basis. The pride always has to go down. And a lot of people, they work on so many different things such as anger, desire, attachment, but they don't work on the pride. And that's that keeps them down. And at the end of the day, they say, I've worked on my anger, I've worked on this, I've worked on that, I've worked on so many different things, but I'm not reaching anywhere. Why? Pride is there. This is, I think, a lot of people forget about it because they don't see it as an issue. They prefer to see it as something supportive. Because sometimes pride can get you quite far in life, so they think it's something useful. They instead of working with it, they nurture it. So yeah, so mind training.